Everybody knows that politics is not a fun subject. Add to that the fact that it's the politics of the biggest church denomination in the world. During the turn of the 10th century, suddenly having a court case prosecuting the corpse of a previous pope starts to make sense. Wait, what the f***? Today's episode covers a situation that requires a lot of weird terminology. Whenever I use this terminology, you'll see the definition at the bottom of the screen. Also, I've tried to dumb this down to not be as confusing as the actual situation was, so I may need to skip over certain extraneous details to help you to understand that the church during the 10th century is the epitome of hypocrisy, power abuse, and political bullshit. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church was in such political disarray that there was a new pope every year. Most of these reigns ended with the death of that pope. The ways that these popes died were, well, questionable. To put that in context, the 20th century saw 8 different popes with an average of 13-year reigns. The 9th century saw 21, not counting the ones that were written out of history by political stupidity. One of these ancient clergymen was a man that went by the name of Formosus. Formosus became the Cardinal of Porto in 864 and Legate of Bulgaria in 866. He became pretty popular and was nominated to be Bishop of Bulgaria, but since he was already Cardinal of Porto and the church forbade clergy to change their see, this was denied. Basically, you can't live in 2 houses at the same time. I mean, you could, but it's really frowned upon. And illegal in some areas. As legate, Formosus was then tasked with sending the message to Charles the Bald that he was to come to Rome and be crowned emperor by the current pope. As with any episode of Game of Thrones, there were many people that didn't want Charles to be crowned. One such person was Formosus. This is not going to end well. This coup against Charles the Bald failed, and that sent all of his detractors running for the hills. Formosus ran off to Tours, France. A synod was called, and Formosus was ordered to return to Rome to answer for his place in the coup. Formosus, like a dog that knows it's gonna get in trouble for getting in the trash, refused to show up. And he was convicted of deserting his diocese without permission, conspiring for the destruction of the papal see, despoiling Roman cloisters, and opposing the emperor. Basically, Formosus was convicted of failing to replace the emperor, stealing stuff from his own church, evading police, trying to destroy the church's political control, and convincing the local monasteries to take a day off. Kind of like when you get pulled over for doing 15 over the limit and get charged with wanton endangerment to go along with it. As a result, he was excommunicated and removed from his roles in the clergy. His excommunication sentence was overturned, though, when he did finally show up and swear to never return to Rome and to never act as a member of the clergy again. Until a couple years later, when this was overturned and Formosus was returned to his papal roles. Get ready, it's one of those episodes. After being reinstated in 878, Formosus was voted unanimously into the papacy in 891. His reign as pope was pretty uneventful except for one thing. He fell back into some bad habits. You'd think he'd learn not to back a coup. Yeah, Formosus wasn't the biggest fan of the current emperor, Guy III. He conspired twice to have someone else take the throne, and both attempts failed. So when Guy's widow and son, the current Emperor Lambert, found out, they might have held a little grudge. Before they could do anything about it, though, Formosus had the audacity to go and die on them. This, of course, didn't sit well with Lambert and the new pope, Formosus's former rival, Stephen VI. Damn it! I wanted revenge! But that piece of shit had to go and die.
Yeah, but there's not much we can do now.
I need to embarrass that motherfucker.
Wait, I have an idea.
So that finally brings us to the topic of today's episode. Under pressure from Lambert, Stephen VI decided to have a synod to bring Formosus up on a plethora of charges. Posthumously. Okay, this isn't abnormal. Posthumous court proceedings happen all the time. Just not like this. Stephen had ordered Formosus to be dug up, dressed in his papal vestments, and propped up in a chair to answer for his crimes. Stephen then questioned the corpse of Formosus. Wait, how's a corpse going to answer questions? Oh, they thought of that little issue. No. Yeah. No! Stephen actually had the defense crouched down behind the chair that Formosus' corpse sat in and answer for Formosus. Honestly, that's a puppet show that I wouldn't mind seeing.
Formosus! Why did you usurp the universal Roman See in such a spirit of ambition?
Isn't that the way that everybody does it?
Shut up.
Of course, Formosus wasn't going to win this, as the jury of cardinals consisted mostly of his enemies and detractors. He was found guilty and had all of his papal proclamations rescinded, including Stephen's own ordination, ironically. Stripped of papal vestments, had his 3 fingers from the hand that he blessed with cut off, and then buried in the cemetery for commoners and foreigners. Apparently this wasn't good enough. Stephen then had Formosus dug up again and tossed into the river. Stephen VI was under the impression that this would bring him favor with the empire, except for the fact that Formosus was very popular among the commoners, and the rest of the clergy saw what became known as the Cadaver Synod as nothing more than a farce and an incredible abuse of power. In reply, the people cried out for Stephen to be removed as pope and imprisoned. Lambert, having accomplished his goal, did just that, and Stephen was imprisoned and later executed by strangulation. Formosus, having been fished out of the river, returned to his original resting place after a later pope rescinded Stephen's ruling, which was then reinstated by a later pope, then rescinded again by yet another pope. Church politics, everybody! And that is the story of the Cadaver Synod, a picture-perfect example of the stupidity and futility that comes with elitism. Power corrupts, and the abuse of that power leads to the toppling of empires. This is a lesson that most governments refuse to learn, even today. Thanks for watching. Also, thanks to Ask a Mortician for helping with making sense of this absolute mess of a story. If you enjoyed this video, why not give it a like? If you want to see more like it and others, why not subscribe to see the next episode of History 101 What the Fuck?
At least there's something